Hello, Stoned Apes and others who are curious about the healing powers of psychedelic medicines. Welcome to the Stoned Ape Reports. I'm your host, Stuart Preston. Each episode, I talk to another Stoned Ape, somebody who has experienced the transformational powers of psychedelics, or with a practitioner who works with these medicines. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Tania de Jong, who shared her story of trauma stemming from her family's Holocaust survival, and her journey into psychedelics, as well as the amazing work that she and her husband are doing in the nonprofit field of psychedelic therapy. So please enjoy this episode with Tania de Jong. Tania, thank you so much for joining me here on the Stoned Ape Reports. It's a real honor to have you here as one of our first guests as we get this thing going.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor to be here with you.
Well, thank you.
I love all the work that you're doing and why you're doing it. It's very meaningful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully we're helping some people. So, and we'll just jump right in. So we're here to talk about, transformation through psychedelics and Stoned Ape stories or whatnot. So, and you're obviously, and we'll get into a lot more details about all the amazing things you have going on, but you're obviously deep into promoting the benefits of psychedelics and psychedelic-assisted therapy. So if you could kind of share your own origin story, what brought you to this and what was going on in your life before you found this and what was your experience? I know I read something about the Netherlands and your husband. And so maybe share your story with me.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm one of these people that has never been into any substances that are going to take me out of control. So, for example, I've never really got drunk. I don't even drink any alcohol at all. I've never smoked, marijuana or anything like that. I don't even drink coffee.
Wow.
Sounds like I'm a really boring person. So the way that, I've got high in the past has been through probably my singing and my creativity and my work as a performer, in particular, and entering transcendental, really high consciousness through my performance and my music, that sort of thing. So it was a real surprise to me when I was reading Tim Ferriss's blog, which I receive weekly, when I came across an article that he had a link to, which was an article by Michael Pollin called The Trip Treatment, which was in the New Yorker magazine. And Tim mentioned that he was investing a lot of money in trials at Imperial College at the time. This was about 4 years ago. And I read the article, and for some reason, it resonated incredibly strongly with me. And I thought, wow, that is just incredible. And I showed it to my husband, Peter, and I said, Peter, we have to do this. We have to find a way to do, this medicine.
Right.
And so he said, okay, well, whatever you think, sort of thing, sounds interesting. And he sort of left it to me for the next 6 months. And the first thing I did was I reached out to Robin Carhart-Harris, who's running the trials at Imperial, who was mentioned in the article. And he said, look, no, there was no trials for really, we don't have a diagnosis of a mental illness. And there was no trials around for healthy volunteers at the time. And so then they introduced us to the Psychedelic Society, and none of their retreat weekends were running. So finally, I got in touch with a private guide in the Netherlands, and we flew overseas to have this session with him. And I should say, that, one of the primary reasons why I did this was that I'd never been out of control, in a sense. I've always been a bit of a control freak, and
right.
Incredible sort of organizer and juggling a lot of balls, and very much, in the doing plane of life. And I had been feeling increasingly like there's got to be more than this, and my own life story is such that I'm the daughter and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. So for me,
trauma.
So for me, I knew that I would be carrying some sort of trauma that, was leading to, some of my sort of obsession with work, that I would be carrying with me in terms of, you know, feelings of anxiety and so on. And then my husband, his father committed suicide when he was 13.
Uh,
And so, you know, though he felt that he'd come to terms with that, it really became evident in our ceremonies and subsequently in our ceremonies that, you know, there were things that we hadn't necessarily dealt with,
mm-hmm.
and that there's this sort of trauma that had been in ourselves for decades, in my case, you know, through lifetimes really, was still there. And that we had to get rid of this if we were going to transcend and if we were going to significantly raise our consciousness and live our lives with the greatest sense of meaning and purpose, fulfill our potential fully as human beings, as spiritual beings. And, you know, more than living on this plane that we see every day, that really, you know, these medicines have taught me so much, but one of the greatest things they've taught me is that there is not just this dimension, that there's so much else going on, and
Right.
you know, that we're really surrounded by spirits. And of course we are each a human spirit as well as, you know, our body. We're so much
Right.
more than our bodies. And yeah, so that's really what happened. This experience, this very first experience we had, was a heroic dose of psilocybin.
Wow. You started off with that?
Well, actually, it was started with Syrian rue, the experience. So an hour before we actually took the
Mm.
psilocybin, we had a tea made of Syrian rue,
Mm-hmm.
and Syrian rue is an MAOI inhibitor, which means that it stops the medicine being broken down in your gut, so that you actually, when you take this psilocybin, it actually amplifies the experience massively. People
Wow.
say between 2 and 5 times the actual dose that you take. So um, it was one of those things that I was so afraid of this, of that this might screw up my brain, that I would never
Right.
be able to work again, that it was going to, you know, really have terrible effects on me, because, you know, you hear these stories all about the stigma of these medicines. And
Right.
so, you know, I'd seen all the science and research, but part of me just was like, oh my God, you know, how is this going to destroy everything, you know? And whereas my husband was just, he hadn't really done a lot of the research, so he just went into it. But for both of us, we were just like shot out of the universe
Wow.
into another world. Um,
Yeah.
and this was so, so powerful for us, this feeling of merging with everything and everything becoming a part of us, that we did indeed, you know, um, feel that sense of awe and that sense of wonder and oneness and connection with everything. And even, you know, towards the end of the experience, both of us just said, wow, well, that is just the most meaningful thing that we've
Yeah.
just about ever experienced. Like, it was so profound. The insights were so huge, and our connection to one another just immediately deepened, as well, which was profound. We also stopped eating meat altogether. Not that we ever ate a lot of it, but I can't even step on an ant now, let alone kill a cockroach. You know,
Right. Yeah.
um, it's just that feeling of every sentient, you know, being, whether it's a tree or an animal. You know, we are all in this together, and just understanding that spirit world was very strong. Anyway, we didn't do the medicines for another year, but we really did a lot of research in that year. We started to read prolifically on the subject, watch all the videos, and started to reach out to some of the people in this space. And a year later, we did our second experience, which was an even higher dose. And that really reinforced everything that we'd experienced in the first session. But as you know from having worked with the medicines have this way somehow of knowing exactly what you need as a human
Right.
being.
They
So
sure do.
that psilocybin fits perfectly into that 5-HT2A receptor, that serotonin receptor in your brain, and it's like
Hmm.
a lock fitting into a key. And every experience, I ask for. So I set intentions like, please show me whatever I need to see, and please heal whatever needs to be healed. That's
Right.
always part of my intention. I might have some other intentions, but that's particularly two of the things I ask for, and the medicine just takes me there. And so I see everything from the cells within my body to, you know, lifetimes that I've never experienced. Of course, I've seen the Holocaust, but I've seen other things that I was not even aware were part of my consciousness or part of my DNA. I don't know where they're coming from. I connect to people in this world and also spirits that have passed on, like my father passed away a
Wow.
few months ago. And I had in December, I deliberately had an experience where I set intentions around connecting with him.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Anyway, that's a long answer to your
Yeah, no,
question.
that's something you mentioned. You mentioned, some insights, that came through these
Mm,
ceremonies. What was there anything in particular that ended up being really impactful that helped you with the challenge that you were dealing with in life, or that
mm,
opened up new possibilities to you? I mean, what kind of insights do you
mm.
remember going through, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, look, I've had incredible insights. I've also done, work with some other medicines. So psilocybin has been the primary medicine for me, what is called the mother medicine or the God molecule. But I've also worked with San Pedro
Hmm.
cactus, which also gave me some really profound insights. I've also worked with ayahuasca and MDMA. Um, so, yeah, quite a few different medicines now. But my husband and I are very intentional in this, and we only take these medicines, between every 4 to 6 months,
Right.
because we take time to integrate what's going on. So, yeah, so the insights have been everything from actually, the insight from the medicines led us to, in particular in my case, to set up the charity Mind Medicine Australia. It was
Hmm.
like, actually, if these medicines are having this impact on us, my husband and I had previously set up 4 other charities which have all been very successful in the spaces of social inclusion, women's homelessness,
Hmm.
microfinance, poverty alleviation in Africa, and so on. And
Wow.
so when we first did this, and particularly after the second time, we thought, well, if this is having this impact on us, our lives, our relationships with others, imagine if we could make these medicines available to people who are experiencing disadvantage and disability, and who are feeling lonely and disconnected and isolated, which is a growing epidemic in our society. And what we realized was that at the base of all disadvantage lies mental illness, just about always.
Right.
And if we could treat mental illness, then we could actually help people to live meaningful lives.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what a gift that would be. So that's probably the greatest insight. But I've had lots of other insights. Like just recently, I had a ceremony where I asked about the virus.
Hmm.
And, one of the insights that I got there, or one of the really strong images I got, was of all the nations' flags being burned in a giant bonfire, which to me is symbolic of the fact that, rather than becoming all nationalistic, which is what people are predicting, that we're all going to shut our borders and lock
Yeah.
people in and, stop people coming to our countries, that actually this is more than ever a wake-up call for humanity, that, in the words of Ramdas, we're all walking each other home,
Hmm.
that we all need to lift each other up. And that we're all in this together, and people keep saying we're all in this together, yet we're trying to build more walls between us and more boxes between us.
Right.
It's
Yeah. But you
ironic.
had that insight that, and part of your journey,
Yes,
you had that insight that, hey, we are all in this together.
that's right. That's right. And so, all my work, Stuart, has been well before this experience has been about breaking down silos, has
Hmm.
been about what I call positive human collisions, which I talk about in my TED talk, how
Mm-hmm.
singing together changes the brain. I talk about how we can connect with people who are really different from us on a regular basis. And it's in that feeling of discomfort and being disagreed with, potentially, that going out of our comfort zone, that's where we get our greatest learnings. Our greatest creativity and innovation happens when we experience what I like to call creative abrasion. And you don't get that from hanging out with people who are just like you on a
Right.
regular, you know?
Yeah.
And so all my work has always been about how do we unite people? How do we become more inclusive? How do we listen to the diverse voices that are around us?
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this work has been really reinforced and highlighted through these medicines.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
when you guys came out of this ceremony, I mean, obviously you're doing amazing things now with your charity and all the other things you do. But when you came out of that first ceremony, were you ready to go out and shout this out to the world? Did you have any
Mm.
kind of pushback from friends and family, like, "Hey, Tanya, what are you doing now? This is a little crazy."
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, well, certainly we did share this experience with our close friends and family, and
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people just thought we had gone crazy.
Right.
It's like, people would say things like, "Oh, well, you've had a mystical experience, but that doesn't mean that this is right for everyone," or you've obviously had some kind of out of body experience, um, but what are you going on about? And it's like, people who haven't used these medicines, it's very, very hard to explain to them.
Yeah, and it can
Um,
be scary to them.
it can, like it was to me,
Right.
but people need to take that leap of faith, because if you take these medicines, and we've always taken these medicines with a guide, certainly in the first few years. I mean, really, the first time we have done we've guided each other as well, but
Mm-hmm.
the first time we did these medicines together was really recently on this, I call it my COVID exploration ceremony. and and we actually did the medicines together. But we're very, very careful. But in 9 out of, say, the 10 experiences that we might have had in 4 years, we've had incredible guides who've been there. And when you take these medicines in an intentional way at the right dose with a guide, they are so remarkably safe. Like, there's been 119 recent trials and all currently taking place, and there's been no adverse events in any of them, not
Yeah.
one. you know. Um, yeah.
And that's
So
what you think is the key. You think a real key is having a guide, somebody to
I
be. I
think,
mean, in addition to the dose, and I guess you would
yes,
probably say set and setting, but a guide is very
yes,
important into this
that's
process.
right. So setting for us, that means being in a place where you feel safe and held. I mean, if you can be somewhere near nature, I think that's really important. In a forest by the ocean, somewhere
Yeah.
like that is powerful. Um, the music and the eye mask, I think, is fundamental to the experience. So going in is very important. We might take our eye mask off at the end of 4 or 5 hours, and then you see nature in a whole different way. But I think it's important to use the eye mask, and of course the music is profound. We'll talk about that further. The music is profoundly important. But yeah, I mean, we had a lot of people who I think were like, what has happened to these people? Like, I mean, Peter is like you know, one of the most successful merchant, bankers, um, in the history of this country. And
Yeah.
I've never taken any drugs whatsoever. And we're both what you'd call very upright citizens. You know, we've never taken
Yeah.
any drugs in our whole life. So I think people thought, what is going on here? But now I think people understand what we're doing, and in general, people are very open to what we're doing, and they're actually very supportive. And now, I mean, even my mother, you know, I'll say to her, I'm going to do a ceremony, Mum. And she goes, oh my God, okay then, well, tell me what you learn, you know. And
Yeah.
then I share with her what I learn. And, you know, look, I honestly wish that all people who can be safe and held, you know, with these medicines in the right setting would have the opportunity
Yeah.
and take that step to go into this state, because the learnings are just so profound, and the feeling of boundless love and connection, you cannot replace that, and it will come into your normal life, into your material
Yeah.
plane life, and it will take you to places you didn't think, and it will also help you become more creative and help you join the dots more in your life normally that you just didn't expect. And yeah, it's, you know, my life has changed more than I could ever imagine because of
And and is that what has kind of inspired you? I want to talk about the music and the playlist, but
yeah,
I think that this goes right into is that the passion that is behind Mind Medicine Artists Australia in your
yes,
nonprofit? I mean, is I feel it coming from you as you talk about it. So is that
yeah,
what kind of got you to that? And you want
yes,
people to have these experiences? You want them to do it with the right guides, the right
yeah.
qualified people? I mean, is that what's behind all this?
Yeah, I mean, without question. I mean, you know, with those first two experiences separated by a year, it just came to us both that if, you know, as I said, if these experiences could be made available to people who are suffering, um, you know, mentally, physically, you know, this would literally say, in many cases, save people's lives,
Yeah.
and certainly change their lives for the better and their relationships, and, you know, mean that the short time that we have on life is, you know, there is a profound sense of gratitude and a sense of meaning and optimism for people, which is more needed than ever now. I mean, if
Right.
ever that was needed, that is needed now.
Yeah.
But I should say that Mind Medicine Australia is completely focused on the use of these medicines in medically controlled environments.
Hmm.
So our mission is to make sure that these medicines are provided to people who are screened properly in medical environments with the right support, and then the right integration process following the medicine session, so that they can integrate these incredible experiences back into their work, their lives, their families, and really use the medicines as medicines that are
Right.
teaching them, you know, in an ongoing way. And so our mission with the charity is that these become part of the toolkit for all doctors and their patients, particularly to begin with psychiatrists who are prescribing doctors, but
Yeah.
over time, you know, other medical practitioners. And so the key strategic objectives in that are, we're building awareness and educating people through a range of events, screenings, webinars, a global summit in November with the leading researchers and psychiatrists in the world coming to Melbourne.
I mean, you
And
really
we're also,
do. You can drop some names if you want to. You've got some amazing people coming to the
yeah,
summit.
yeah. So, you know, all the leaders in this field, you know, not all of them, but the majority of them, people like Robin Carhart-Harris, David Nutt, Ben Sessa, Rick Doblin, people like Wade Davis,
Yeah.
you know, look, just incredible people from around the world who are coming to Melbourne from all over the world. And part of that strategy also is we're setting up national and regional, like metropolitan and regional chapters
Hmm.
throughout Australia and potentially Asia and New Zealand as well. And we're seeing ourselves as a hub really for the Asia Pacific region. We're also setting up the first professional development certificate in psychedelic therapies in the region. So
Mm-hmm.
we've brought one of the top clinical psychologists who worked on the Imperial College Psilocybin trials to Melbourne to live in Australia, and she's developing and designing that course
Wow.
with Janice Phelps from the California Institute of Integrative Studies, and that will start early in 2021. And we have a wait list of like over 250 psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists, drug and alcohol counsellors, GPs and others on the wait list for that one, which will be released in the next few weeks. And then we're looking at setting up an Asia Pacific Centre of Excellence for applied research and development of these medicines for the use in different conditions, ranging from, anorexia and eating disorders to PTSD to dementia, it might be ADHD, OCD. There's so many conditions that could be potentially healed with these
Mm-hmm.
medicines. And as you know, over 50,000 patients were healed with these medicines in the 50s and 60s before the
Right.
prohibition by Nixon. And then part of the Centre of Excellence will also be looking at the manufacture and growing of these medicines in Australia, the rollout of clinics, the rescheduling and ethical frameworks for these medicines in Australia. And yeah, it's very exciting really what we're doing. We're really setting up the whole ecosystem for these medicines. And it's important to also say that my husband and I are doing this entirely as philanthropists. So we're
Nice.
not wanting or needing to make money out of this. There are
Mm-hmm.
many investors around who see psychedelic medicines as an enormous industry, and they will and are becoming that. But
Right.
I would say to every person who's out there, and if there's investors listening, that you want to set up a triple bottom line in your startup and your business so that you're doing this for the right reasons. If you really want these medicines to be available, then make sure they're available and affordable to everyone who's suffering.
Right.
And we know that these medicines can only become available to the millions of people, well, hundreds of millions of people suffering and for-profit enterprises.
Yeah. And that is amazing you're doing all that. And yeah, I hope some of these investors will jump in. Like you said, I never heard that term, the triple bottom line. You mean the donations
Yeah.
to charity and doing good?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that anyone who sets up a for-profit commercial organisation from day one can set a mission that they're going to donate a percentage of their
Yeah.
profits back to, helping not-for-profits and supporting not-for-profits in this space.
Yeah.
And I encourage that really strongly.
Yeah, that's great. I love what you guys are doing. Where do you see, and I don't know, maybe in Australia or in that area, where do you see psychedelics and psychedelic therapy going? What are your expectations? I mean, with the
Well,
work
my
you're doing, what are your
expectation
goals?
is, yeah, well, our expectation is that, when you go to a doctor and you say that you're suffering from some kind of certainly mental illness,
Yeah.
that the doctor will not just give you the options of antidepressants or psychotherapy, but will actually say, well, actually, there's also psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And the remission rates are at the moment between 60 to 80% versus maximum of about 35% with those others. And, that you could be healed in just a few sessions with integration psychotherapy, providing support for the medicine sessions,
Right.
so that you actually give patients the opportunity to have access to these medicines in medically controlled environments. And we're not suggesting that people can take home the medicines and, take them wherever they want. They actually need to
Right.
be supervised. And that this becomes part of the toolkit for doctors, because all the doctors and psychiatrists we speak to tell us they cannot get the majority of patients well through the current
Right.
treatments, right? So most like they say to us, out of 20 patients, we might get one well through the current treatments. So that clogs up the whole system. That means with this epidemic now of increased mental illness through the virus, for example, there's no psychiatrists and psychologists who have space on their books because they're not getting people well through the current treatments available. So, and the way that can happen is two ways. One is through regulation of these medicines, which is, happening through the phase 3 trials and the phase 2B trials in the US and Europe. But the other way that these medicines are becoming available, and are available now, is through what are called special access schemes or compassionate use schemes, where a psychiatrist who's run out of options for a patient who's in danger can apply to the regulators to treat patients with these medicines through the special access scheme. And that's a scheme that's been used to make medicinal cannabis available on a much broader scale to people.
Yeah.
So that can occur as soon as now, with the right psychiatrist and the right patients.
Anywhere?
It can have that scheme is available in the US, in Switzerland and Israel, and hopefully sooner. I believe it's almost there, and if not already available in Canada, and of course hopefully in Australia as well.
Yeah. Good. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Before I ask you what else you want to share, I did want to jump back and talk to you about this music, because obviously you're an accomplished, amazing singer, musician, and so I saw somewhere out there and some of the information that you sent me about some playlists that you put together. And so I wanted to ask you kind of two sides to this. One is you mentioned synesthesia, which is I'm very curious about that, but also in general for a psychedelic journey. So I don't know if you can kind of wrap both of those together or talk about this and about your music.
Yeah, I mean, the music is incredibly important, and we were very lucky in that the first guide that we had, the Dutch guide, had an incredible playlist, and we felt like we were part of that music. We felt like we were, if there was a strings, for example, we felt like we were the strings, or the piano, we felt like we were literally part of the piano, or if there was a chorus of choir of voices, then I could literally see, it was like I could see the voices singing that music, or the organs are really interesting, organs and gongs. It's like you can see them, you can see all the different parts of those instruments when you're having these psychedelic medicines. And so what I did was I just started to download a whole lot of music that has either been sent to me or that I've heard, or even music that I've composed myself or others have composed for me. And then also taking all the different traditions of music through, from sort of spiritual and transcendental music through to music of different cultures, to classical music and contemporary music. And I've woven this into what I call my mushroom playlist.
Nice.
And it's like an 8-hour playlist that I'm always adapting. And I've adapted this playlist in such a way that it takes people who are having these medicines through the experience and through each stage of the journey. So it's like right through from, if, for example, you were to take Syrian rue, which are peganum seeds, which are legal, actually, substances. So they're the substance I mentioned at the start. And you might... So you take those an hour before the psilocybin. So I've got music for that takes you into a meditative state. And then when the experience starts, I use some Brian Eno. And then I use a lot of music for the first, say, 3 hours, let's say, first 3 hours, that is very, it's non-recognizable to most people. It ranges from crystal bowls to gongs to
Mm-hmm.
voices, but they're very, there's no melodic structure to the music, but it's tuning in with you so that it's helping you to transcend and to become one with a higher consciousness and the spiritual plane. Yeah. And
Wow.
then after about, say, 3 hours, I start to weave in some more music that is classical, but it's not traditional classical music either. It might be some Max Richter, or it might be some other classical music that's sort of been improvised on, in a sense, and so still not as recognizable to people, because I think it's really important that people don't connect back into this material world too soon in the ceremony. And then I start to then bring in some other classical music, some more traditional classical music, but really, really beautiful, like just the most angelic music. And then also some songs that have some themes, like, for example, there's a song I use called Humble Yourself, which is really important because it's all about people realizing the connection they have with their brothers and sisters, and all brothers and sisters, not just your real brothers and sisters, but
Yeah. Are there lyrics? Or
humanity.
there's actually spoken words in the song?
Yeah, humble yourself. Yeah, so that
Okay.
starts to really have some lyrics that start to really connect you to broader humanity and themes of suffering and
Right.
rising up and lifting each other up and so on. And then I also have some of my own music in there, so pieces from my recent albums. I use quite a lot of pieces also from kirtan, chanting later
Yeah.
on in the ceremony. And then, a bit of contemporary music as well, and, even things like Viva La Vida towards the end, just to, because you start feeling like you want to move and dance.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, like, people have said to me, oh my God, that is like the ultimate playlist for ceremonies. And I've actually shared that playlist with a few guides who I really respect, and
Mm-hmm.
they've started to use that playlist. And what's been interesting is that I've used that playlist with some other people as well, and they've said, oh my God, it was like, just when I thought the music couldn't get any better, it was like the next piece was like even more profound, and I became like part of this music, and I could feel like my whole being was the instrument, and that the music helped me to open my boundaries even more and to go into, in some cases it might be, a galactic or cosmic, feeling of flying in space, or in other times it might be that I'm whirling through the whole universe, or I'm swimming in a river, or I'm under the sea.
Wow.
And yeah, so the music really helps, certainly the people that I know and have
Yeah.
worked with these playlists, to transcend more quickly and more effectively into other states.
Hmm. Well, that's amazing. That's so it's a big part, not only a guide and set and setting and dose, but also this amazing playlist. Is this
Yeah.
available somewhere? Do you sell it? Do you have it listed out somewhere? How or is
I
it
am
something you guys
thinking of,
offer?
yeah, I haven't shared it publicly yet. I'm thinking about what to do with it.
Okay.
Um, and I share it with people who are close,
Yeah,
um, and there are more people developing music. I think there's some playlists potentially on Spotify that some other
there
people have
are.
been using.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I'm always open to seeing what I can do, and I always want to share with people
Yeah.
uh, this sort of thing. And I don't have a profit motive, so I
Right.
want I want to help people to experience these medicines and get the most healing possible.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. So, what else? As we wrap this up, what else?
Mm.
Is there anything else you want to share? Is there anything else I have not talked to you about or asked you about? What else
Um,
do you want to get out there?
Look, yeah, I want to encourage people to jump on mindmedicineaustralia.org and have a
Okay.
look at what we're doing, and certainly have a look at our summit, which is taking place in November, and we'd
Mm-hmm.
love people to sign up. We've already sold over 250 tickets, so it's undoubtedly going to sell out.
Wow. Is
Um,
there a virtual aspect to that, so somebody from the States could buy
well,
a virtual ticket or participate somehow, or is it only live?
it's only live, and
Okay.
if for some reason, our borders are still locked up by then we'll move it to
Okay.
next year, because the way that we look at this is really important. There's a lot of virtual seminars taking place now, but to really connect with other people, I still believe you really have
Be there,
to
yeah.
be in a room with people and to experience these experiences together. That's where the real magic and transformation takes place for people. And I've devised 8 previous global conferences in the innovation space, and we
Wow.
always the conferences and summits that I create are not like your normal conferences and summits, and you have to be there because we take people on a journey that is not just a speaker speaking on the stage. We actually use visuals and music and
Huh.
other experiences to help people really connect to the content that's being shared by presenters.
Nice.
So that's really tricky to do using a sort of what I call a very sort of 3D at most, 2D
Yeah.
sort of
An
format like
immersive
Zoom.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. So we take people right into the experience, and that the learning that occurs through that is far greater.
Yeah.
So I'm loath to do we're doing other webinars at the moment. I encourage people to join our webinars, which are free
Okay.
at the
And those
moment.
are on the website?
Yeah, they're in our event section, as is the
Okay.
summit. We also have a massive learn section on our website where you can read and watch a whole lot of really, really high quality content on the medicines. And
Okay.
also people can, join our social media on all the different platforms and follow us. And the other thing I'd really encourage people to do who are listening is to donate and support us. There's ways that people can support us monthly, and just jump on board and know that our intentions are entirely pure and they're not going to change. And
Right.
we are going to make sure that these medicines become available to as many people as we can. That's part of the gift we want to give.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So we can help. We can donate. Is there? And I'll put a link to that on the podcast on the website. What is there anything else that people can do to help, or is it really pretty much get the funding in there?
Well, I think spreading the word about Mind Medicine Australia and
Mm-hmm.
supporting in different ways that they can is really great. And just coming to the summit and sharing the word about that. And if they want to become a psychedelic therapist, then register for the training.
Hmm.
And you've probably got people listening from all over the world, so there's lots of scope with that.
Yeah, we sure do.
Um,
So hopefully we can get somebody over there.
yeah, and also encourage people to watch and share my TED Talk. A lot of my philosophies around creativity, and certainly the work I've done in my previous charity, the With One Voice program, is on my TED Talk, and I think it's nearly at 100,000 views now, so it's going
Wow,
well.
that's awesome. I will put a link to that, or even embed it on the podcast so people can get there.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing would be, and I'll send you the links for this, is connecting people to my music, my particular albums,
Mm-hmm.
which are available through iTunes and my website. And so my
Okay.
website is Tania de Jong, TaniaDejong.com.au. No, just .com, sorry.
Okay.
TaniaDeJong.com.
All right. We'll get that on
Yeah,
there too.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tania, thank you so much for all this great information. I really enjoyed hearing your story and hearing about all the amazing things that you and your husband and all your volunteers are doing. So I'm just super grateful
Mm.
for both your time and all the work you're doing.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure, and I just encourage everyone to go and dance with the stars.
There you go. Go dance with the stars. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. That concludes this edition of the Stoned Ape Reports. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Stoned Ape Comedy and subscribe to our newsletter at www.stonedapecomedy.com. Again, thanks for listening and catch you next time, Stoned Apes.